I came home to Oakwood Meadows, our slice of suburban Midwest paradise, expecting the usual Sarah watering her petunias, the neighbor's dog yapping, maybe a stray soccer ball from the kids down the street. Instead, I found my wife Sarah, sitting on our porch, a black eye blooming like a bad tattoo, her hands shaking worse than a recruit on their first day of SEAL training. She looked up, eyes wide, and said, "Jack, it was the HOA. They pushed me." My blood didn't just boil, it hit nuclear meltdown. Those clipboard-wielding, power-tripping HOA enforcers had no idea who they were messing with. I'm Jack Thompson, 52, retired Navy SEAL, and they just painted a target on their own backs. Let me set the scene. Oakwood Meadows is the kind of place where the grass is always greener because the HOA fines you $50 if it grows past 2 inches. It's 2025, and the HOA runs this neighborhood like it's their personal fiefdom. Their rule book, thicker than a Tom Clancy novel, dictates everything from mailbox colors to how many seconds your garage door can stay open. Sarah, my saint of a wife, had parked our Prius in the guest spot because our assigned space was under repair. Cracked concrete, a hazard, approved for fixing by the AOA's own maintenance crew. She'd even gotten a nod from Karen White, the HOA president, whose permed hair and world's best OA president mug collection scream, I peaked in high school. So, Sarah was in the clear, or so we thought. Enter Dave and Greg, the HOA's dynamic duo of enforcers. Picture 2 guys who think they're one badge away from starring in a buddy cop movie, but instead of guns, they've got radios, clipboards, and egos bigger than a destroyer-class warship. These aren't cops, mind you, just hired security goons who treat their HOA badge like it's a congressional medal. They rolled up on Sarah like she'd parked a tank in the guest spot, citing Rule 4.70, all vehicles must be parked in assigned spaces. Sarah, calm as ever, explained the situation. Approved repair, Karen's okay, temporary guest spot. But Dave, with his knockoff Ray-Bans and a gut that suggested he enforced Buffett lines more than rules, wasn't having it. "Rules are rules, lady," he barked, jabbing a sausage finger at her. Greg, the skinnier one who probably spent his nights Googling how to look intimidating, took it further. When Sarah stood her ground, politely pointing out their error, Greg shoved her hard. She stumbled, hit her head on the car door, and went down. By the time I pulled into the driveway, they were looming over her, threatening a $200 fine for resisting compliance. Resisting compliance. My wife was resisting a concussion, you power-drunk mall cops. I stepped out of my truck, all 6'2" of me, and the air shifted. Dave and Greg froze, their bravado flickering like a bad fluorescent bulb. I've stared down insurgents in Fallujah, disarmed IEDs under fire, and once swam 3 miles in a storm to save my squad. 2 wannabe tough guys with walkie-talkies. They were chum in the water. But I kept my cool. SEALs don't just charge in, they strategize. "Everything okay here?" I asked, voice low, the kind that makes people rethink their life choices. Sarah ran to me, tears streaking her face, and told me everything. My jaw clenched so hard I could have cracked walnuts. Dave tried to puff up, saying, "Sir, your wife violated Rule 4.7, and we're authorized to." I cut him off with a look. "You know the one. I've defused bombs and you're not one of them, but I'm considering it." Look. Greg, smarter than he looked, tugged Dave's sleeve, muttering, "Let's go, man." They scurried back to their golf cart. Yes, a golf cart, because nothing says authority like a vehicle that tops out at 15 miles an hour, and peeled out, leaving a trail of self-important dust. I took Sarah inside, got her ice for the bruise, and made her tea. She was shaken but tough. Married to a SEAL for 20 years, you learn resilience. "They can't do that, can they?" she asked. I shook my head. They can't, and they won't again. Legally, HOA enforcers have 0 right to lay hands on anyone. Assault's a crime, not a perk of their fake badge. I remembered a case from HOA News about some HOA president in Florida who got arrested for aggravated assault. Dave and Greg weren't just bullies. They were liabilities. Now, if you're watching this on your phone, TV, or computer, let me know in the comments. Where are you, and what time is it? And while you're at it, share your own HOA horror stories. Ever dealt with goons like Dave and Greg? I bet you have. These guys were straight out of Central Casting. Dave, with his "I was a high school linebacker" swagger, and Greg, who probably practiced his tough guy scowl in the mirror every morning. Their radios crackled with Karen's voice, no doubt egging them on. Karen, who I'm pretty sure has a shrine to Robert's Rules of Order in her basement, runs the HOA like it's her personal empire. But empires fall, and I was about to be the guy handing out the sledgehammers. Humor aside, I was livid. Sarah's black eye was a line crossed, a declaration of war. But I didn't need to go full Rambo, not yet. A CL's strength is in precision, not chaos. I'd start by digging into Rule 4.7, HOA's sacred scripture. If it was as flimsy as I suspected, Dave and Greg's little power trip was about to crash harder than their golf cart on a speed bump. And Karen, she'd learned that messing with a CL's family is a tactical error of catastrophic proportions. For now, I held Sarah close, her head on my shoulder, and promised her justice. Not the loud, flashy kind, but the slow, surgical kind that leaves bullies unemployed and HOAs rewriting their rule books. Dave and Greg thought they'd won their little parking lot showdown. They had no idea they'd just kicked a hornet's nest. And I was the hornet with 20 years of covered ops training. Game on, boys. Game on. What happens when a retired Navy SEAL digs into the HOA's dirty secrets? Spoiler, it's not pretty. And it's definitely not good for Karen White's ego. After Sarah's run-in with Dave and Greg, Oakwood Meadows' finest clipboard commandos, I was a man on a mission. My wife's black eye was a battle scar I wasn't letting slide, and I wasn't about to go all guns blazing, not yet. Sales don't just punch, we plan. And step one was tearing apart the HOA's flimsy rulebook like it was a wet paper bag. I started with Rule 4.7. The sacred parking decree Dave and Greg waved around like it was the Constitution. I pulled the OA handbook from our shelf, 200 pages of fine print that could put a caffeinated lawyer to sleep. Rule 4.7. All vehicles must be parked in assigned spaces. Sounds ironclad, right? Wrong. The fine print was vaguer than a politician's campaign promise. It didn't account for approved exceptions, like when your parking spot's being jackhammered for repairs. Sarah had Karen's verbal okay to use the guest spot, but good luck finding that in the rulebook. It was like trying to navigate a minefield blindfolded, and I'd done that before. Literally. I fired up my laptop, sipping coffee strong enough to wake a coma patient, and dug deeper. The HOA's website was a masterpiece of 90s web design, Comic Sans, clipart of smiling neighbors, and a contact us form that probably went straight to Karen's spam folder. Buried in the meeting minutes, I found gold. A resident had complained last year about overzealous enforcement of parking rules. The board, led by Karen, dismissed it as non-compliant whining. Classic. Karen White with her permed hair and a collection of world's best OA president mugs she definitely bought herself. Wasn't just running a tight ship, she was captaining a pirate galleon. Next, I hit the streets, the cold D-sacks. I knocked on Tom's door, our neighbor who'd been slapped with a $75 fine for a non-compliant mailbox. Tom, a retired mechanic with a beard that screamed, "I brew my own beer," invited me in. Over a couple of IPAs, he spilled the tea. Dave and Greg showed up, measured my mailbox with a ruler, and said it was half an inch too tall.
Half an inch?
I thought they were joking, but then the fine came. He showed me the citation, complete with a photo of Greg smirking like he'd just busted Pablo Escobar. Tom's mailbox was fine, literally and figuratively, but the HOA didn't care. It was about control, not compliance. I talked to more neighbors, and the stories piled up like unpaid parking tickets. Lisa, the yoga instructor down the street, got fined for an unauthorized garden gnome because it violated Rule 12.3, no lawn ornaments without board approval. She called it Gnomegate. and was still salty. Old man Jenkins got a warning for leaving his trash cans out 15 minutes past pickup time. The pattern was clear. Dave and Greg were Karen's attack dogs, and the HOA board turned a blind eye to their reign of terror. I half expected to find a secret dungeon under Karen's house with a shrine to Robert's rules of order and a voodoo doll of every resident. For kicks, I googled HOA abuse and hit the jackpot. A local news article from 2023 detailed a nearby HOA sued for assault after their enforcers got handsy with a resident over a fence dispute. The case, Fowler v. Golden Pacific Bancorp, confirmed what I suspected: HOAs aren't above the law. Their enforcers aren't cops, and assaulting someone, like shoving my wife, could land them in handcuffs, not just a sternly worded letter. Another gem from Find HOA Law: homeowners could sue for selective enforcement if rules were applied inconsistently. Rule 4.7's vagueness was a legal landmine, and I was about to detonate it. Humor kept me sane through the rage. Karen's HOA meetings, I imagine, were like a cult ritual, board members chanting, "Rules are rules," while sacrificing common sense on an altar of bureaucracy. Dave and Greg probably had a secret handshake and a playlist of Bad Boys on repeat in their golf cart. But the more I learned, the angrier I got. Sarah's bruise was healing, but the injustice wasn't. These weren't just overzealous hall monitors. They were bullies hiding behind badges, and Karen was their enabler. I called a buddy from my SEAL days, Mike, now a lawyer in Chicago. Over a beer-soaked Zoom call, he confirmed my hunch. Jack, HOA enforcers have no legal authority to touch anyone. What Greg did, that's assault, plain and simple. Look up Joseph Steckler v. State of Florida. HOA president got arrested for less. You've got a case, but you need evidence. Evidence, huh? I'd collected more intel in Fallujah with less to go on. I started a file: screenshots of Rule 4.7, Tom's mailbox citation, Lisa's gnome fine, the news article, and a photo of Sarah's black eye. It was a dossier worthy of a CIA operative. The neighborhood buzzed with whispers of rebellion. Tom was ready to storm the next OA meeting with his mailbox measurements. Lisa joked about a gnome liberation front protest, which I low-key supported. Even Jenkins, who mostly grumbled about kids these days, promised to bring his trash can saga to the table. The HOA thought they were untouchable, but they'd underestimated Oakwood Meadows and me. I wasn't just a retired SEAL. I was a ticked-off husband with a knack for strategy and a grudge the size of a battleship. As I closed my laptop, Sarah peeked into my office. "You're not planning to, blow up the HOA clubhouse, are you?" she teased. I grinned. "Nah, babe. I'm gonna do something worse, make them follow their own rules." She laughed, and for the first time since the incident, her smile reached her eyes. That was my fuel. Karen, Dave, and Greg thought they'd won their little parking lot power trip. They didn't know I was building a case tighter than a submarine hatch, and when I was done, their HOA empire would be begging for a ceasefire. Step 2: the showdown. Stay tuned, Oakwood Meadows. This CL's just getting started. Can a retired Navy SEAL outmaneuver a self-important HOA board? Spoiler alert, when you've disarmed bombs under fire, a room full of clipboard tyrants is just a Tuesday. After digging into the HOA's dirty laundry, Rule 4.7's vagueness, Dave and Greg's bully antics, and Karen White's reign as Oakwood Meadows' perm dictator, I was ready for war. Not the kind with explosions, but the kind where you walk into a room, drop a legal bombshell, and watch egos implode. The HOA board meeting was my battlefield, and I was locked and loaded with evidence. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a beige box that smelled like stale coffee and broken dreams. Folding chairs were arranged in rows, occupied by neighbors who looked like they'd rather be anywhere else. At the front, the board sat behind a table like a suburban Supreme Court, Karen White presiding with her, world's best HOA president, mug front and center. Dave and Greg lurked in the back, their golf cart swagger replaced by the nervous energy of guys who knew they'd screwed up. I walked in, dossier under my arm, dressed in my old SEAL team polo, because nothing says, "I'm not here to play," like a shirt with an embroidered trident. Karen banged her gavel, a prop she probably bought at a Dictators Us clearance sale, and called the meeting to order. "Let's keep this civil, folks," she said, her smile as fake as her highlights. I waited my turn, letting her drone through agenda items about pool hours and unauthorized holiday lights. When she opened the floor for comments, I stood, and the room went quieter than a submarine on silent running. Dave adjusted his knockoff Ray-Bans, and Greg's clipboard trembled like he was holding a live grenade. "Mrs. White," I began, voice steady, "I'm here about an incident involving your enforcers, Dave and Greg, assaulting my wife, Sarah, over a parking issue." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Karen's face tightened, but she waved a hand. "Mr. Thompson, rules are rules. Your wife parked in the guest spot, violating Rule 4.7. I smiled, the kind of smile that makes sharks rethink their lunch plans. "Funny you mention Rule 4.7, because I've got some thoughts." I opened my dossier and laid it out like I was briefing a SEAL team. First, Rule 4.7's vagueness. No mention of approved exceptions, like Sarah's case, which Karen herself had okayed. I held up the HOA handbook, dog-eared at the page, and read the rule aloud, pausing for effect. Sounds like it needs a rewrite, unless you enjoy selective enforcement lawsuits. Karen's perm seemed to wilt. I cited Fowler v. Golden Pacific Bancorp, where an HOA got sued for inconsistent rule application. Fun Show Law 2023. I added, tossing in the source like a mic drop. Next, I tackled Dave and Greg's overreach. "Your enforcers aren't cops," I said, eyeing them. "They're hired security, and shoving a resident. That's assault." I pulled out a printout of a news article about an HOA enforcer arrested for similar behavior, quoting HO violence. Part 2 from HO leader. Greg pushed my wife, causing a head injury. In Florida, Joseph Steckler v. State landed an HOA president in jail for less. Dave's guts seemed to shrink. Greg looked like he wanted to crawl under his clipboard. The room buzzed. Neighbors whispered, some nodding, others scribbling notes. Karen tried to regain control, her voice shrill. "Mr. Thompson, this is highly irregular. You can't just threaten us." I leaned forward, locking eyes. "I'm not threatening, Karen. I'm informing. And here's the kicker, I've got a dozen residents ready to share their own stories of your board's abuse. Fines for mailboxes, gnomes, trash cans, you name it. Keep this up, and I'll take it to the media. Local news loves a good HOA scandal." Karen's face turned the color of a fire engine, and I swear her mug cracked under the pressure. "I've seen better leadership on a kindergarten playground," I quipped, earning a chuckle from Tom, who was sitting nearby, clutching his mailbox citation like a battle flag. The other board members, a mix of Karen's yes men and nervous newbies, started whispering, clearly spooked. One guy, Bob, who always looked like he was one bad decision from quitting, mouthed, "We're screwed." Dave and Greg, still in the back, were shrinking into their chairs. Dave's Ray-Bans slipped down his nose, and Greg's clipboard was now a shield. They'd strutted into our neighborhood like they were the FBI, but faced with a SEAL armed with facts, they were just two guys who'd peaked at Employee of the Month at a strip mall security firm. I almost felt bad, almost. Then I remembered Sarah's black eye, and my pity evaporated faster than their authority. Karen tried one last deflection. "We'll review the incident, Mr. Thompson, but let's not blow this out of proportion." I crossed my arms. "Too late for that. You've got a pattern of ignoring complaints, and I've got the receipts." I held up my dossier thick with neighbor testimonies, legal precedents, and screenshots. "Fix this, or Oakwood Meadows is about to be famous for all the wrong reasons." The meeting adjourned in chaos, Karen banging her gavel like she was auditioning for a judge show. Neighbors swarmed me, some shaking my hand, others asking how they could help. Tom clapped my shoulder. "You roasted her, Jack. I'm bringing my mailbox to the next meeting." Lisa, the gnome warrior, grinned. "I'm printing Gnome Liberation Front t-shirts." Even Jenkins, usually grumpier than a cat in a bathtub, muttered, Good work, son. As I left the clubhouse, I caught Dave and Greg slipping out the back, their golf cart waiting like a getaway car. They avoided my gaze and I let them scurry. This wasn't over, but I'd landed the first blow. Karen's empire was cracking, and the neighborhood was waking up. I'd turned a stuffy HOA meeting into a battlefield, and the board was on the ropes. Step 3: The uprising. Oakwood Meadows was about to learn what happens when you push a seal, and his neighbors, too far. What happens when the whole community stands up to HOA tyranny? You get a rebellion that's half revolution, half sitcom, and all glorious chaos. After I dropped a legal nuke on Karen White and her HOA board at the clubhouse showdown, Oakwood Meadows was buzzing like a hornet's nest I'd personally kicked. My dossier, packed with Rule 4.7's flaws, Dave and Greg's assault on Sarah, and a buffet of neighbor grievances, had lit a fire under the residents. The board thought they ruled with an iron clipboard, but they'd just woken a sleeping giant, a neighborhood fed up with fines, egos, and Karen's perm-powered dictatorship. The meeting hadn't ended so much as exploded. Karen's gavel-banging tantrum couldn't drown out the murmurs of revolt. As we spilled out of the clubhouse, neighbors who'd once nodded meekly at HOA edicts were now swapping war stories like veterans at a VFW hall. I stood by the door, shaking hands and fielding whispers of, "You're crazy, Jack," and "Sign me up." My SEAL instincts kicked in. This wasn't just a skirmish anymore. It was a full-blown uprising, and I was the guy with the battle plan. Tom, the bearded mailbox martyr, was first to rally. "I'm done with these clowns," he growled, waving his A75 citation like a red flag. They measured my mailbox with a ruler, Jack. "A ruler!" "I'm bringing it to the next meeting and demanding a refund." I grinned. "Do it, Tom. Bring the ruler too." Lisa, our gnome-loving yoga guru, chimed in, eyes sparkling with mischief. "I'm starting a gnome liberation front. We'll plant gnomes on every lawn until they repeal Rule 12.3. I laughed so hard I nearly choked. "Lisa, you're a menace, and I'm here for it." Even old man Jenkins, who usually saved his energy for yelling at kids on his lawn, shuffled over. They fined me for my trash cans being out 15 minutes late. 15 minutes? "I'm in, Thompson." I gave him a nod. "Welcome to the resistance, Jenkins." We gathered at my place that night, a motley crew of suburban rebels crammed into my living room, munching Sarah's homemade cookies. Sarah, her black eye fading but her spirit fiercer than ever, played hostess, pouring coffee and tossing in quips like, "If Karen finds us for this meeting, I'm framing the citation." The mood was electric, part strategy session, part comedy roast. I laid out the plan we'd document every HOA violation, from mailbox fines to gnome bans, and file a formal complaint with the state HOA oversight agency. I'd found a precedent in France's TV Village Green Owners Association, where homeowners successfully challenged an HOA through collective action. "We've got numbers," I said. "Heard numbers mean power." Humor kept the room light. Lisa proposed a Gnome Liberation Day protest complete with garden gnomes dressed as revolutionaries. "Think Che Guevara but ceramic," she said, sketching a gnome with a tiny beret. Tom suggested we all park in guest spots to stress test Rule 4.7's vagueness, which got a round of cheers. Jenkins, sipping his coffee, deadpanned, "I'm leaving my trash cans out all week. Let's see Dave measure that." Sarah leaned over, whispering, "You've created a monster." "Jack," I winked. "Good. Monsters get results." We got serious too. I passed out notebooks, CL style, and told everyone to log every HOA interaction, dates, times, fines, threats. "Details win wars," I said. "Dave and Greg aren't smart, but they're sloppy. We catch them slipping, we win." Lisa showed us a photo of her gnome, confiscated by Greg with a citation calling it an unapproved aesthetic disruption. We howled. "Aesthetic disruption?" Tom snorted. "Greg's face is an aesthetic disruption." The room erupted, and I knew we were unstoppable. A neighborhood of underdogs ready to bite back. Our next move was media. I'd learned from my research that HOAs hate publicity like vampires hate garlic. A local news station, Channel 7, had covered an HOA scandal in 2023, and they'd jump at another. I drafted an email attaching my dossier and a photo of Sarah's black eye, us with her okay. Oakwood Meadows HOA enforcers assault resident over parking dispute. I titled it Channeling My Inner Tabloid Editor. Lisa volunteered to call the station and pitch Gnomegate as a human interest hook. "They'll eat it up," she said. "Who doesn't love a gnome?" I pictured Karen's face on the 6 o'clock news, redder than a stop sign, and smiled. Back at the clubhouse, Karen tried to shut us down. She called an emergency meeting to address recent disruptions, which was code for Jack's making us look bad. We showed up en masse, 20 of us, filling the room with a vibe that screamed, "Try us." Karen, clutching her gavel like a lifeline, opened with a passive-aggressive sermon about community unity and respecting rules. I stood holding my notebook. "Unity's great, Karen, but what about your enforcers assaulting my wife? Or finding Tom for a half-inch mailbox? Or Lisa's gnome?" The room erupted in shouts of "Yeah!" and "Gnomegate!" Karen's perm quivered, and Dave and Greg, stationed by the exit, looked like they'd rather be guarding a porta-potty. Tom took the floor, holding his mailbox citation aloft. "This is tyranny, not governance!" Lisa followed, brandishing a photo of her gnome. "This is my property, and you don't get to steal it." Jenkins, in a rare burst of energy, waved his trash can fine. 15 minutes! You're fining me for living!" The board, caught off guard, stammered. Bob, the nervous board member, looked like he was Googling how to resign under the table. Karen banged her gavel, but it was like trying to stop a tidal wave with a paper towel. We left that meeting as an alliance, not just a neighborhood. Our complaint to the state was filed the next day, 30 pages of documented abuses signed by 15 residents. Channel 7 called back, scheduling a segment for next week. Lisa ordered 50 gnome stickers to slap on mailboxes as a subtle protest. Tom parked his truck in the guest spot, daring Dave to write a ticket. And me, I was the guy who'd turned a stuffy HOA meeting into a revolution, all while keeping my cool. Karen's empire was crumbling, and Stuart's are right on top of each other, and the next meeting was going to be a bloodbath, in the best way. Step 4, the resolution. Oakwood Meadows was rising, and I was loving every second. Justice was served, with a kicker that even a seal couldn't see coming. The Oakwood Meadows rebellion, sparked by my Navy SEAL instincts and a neighborhood sick of Karen White's OA dictatorship, hit like a precision strike. Our alliance, armed with a 30-page complaint, gnome stickers, and Channel 7's cameras, had turned our Midwest suburb into a cautionary tale. Headlines blared, "OA enforcers assault resident," and "Gnomegate grips Oakwood Meadows." Lisa's ceramic rebels became local legends, grinning from every newsstand. The state HOA oversight agency swooped in, our dossier their roadmap, and Karen's empire was on life support. The final showdown came at a packed clubhouse meeting, the air thick with defiance. Neighbors clutched citations like war trophies, gnome stickers plastered on jackets. Karen, behind her, world's best HOA president, mug a self-awarded relic, looked like she'd been run over by her own golf cart. Her gavel, once a tyrant's scepter, was now a sad prop. I stood, my dossier a neighborhood myth, and laid it out. "Your enforcers assaulted my wife, Sarah. Your rules are flimsier than your clipboard. The state's watching, the news is watching, and we're done." The crowd roared, Tom waving his mailbox fine, Lisa hoisting a gnome photo, Jenkins brandishing his trash can citation. 15 minutes, he bellowed, and the room lost it. Karen's face went tomato red, her perm trembling. "I hope you enjoy your lawless utopia," she hissed, venom dripping. I grinned. "Relax, Karen. We'll mail you a Gnome Liberation Day invite." The laughter was deafening. Bob, the board's resident pushover, proposed a vote to boot Karen as president. The yes hit like a tsunami, her gavel useless against the tide. Karen was dethroned, her reign reduced to a pile of clearance rack mugs. Dave and Greg were next. The board, scrambling to dodge the state's wrath, Can them faster than you can say. Rule 4.7. Dave's fake Ray-Bans couldn't hide his flop sweat. Greg's clipboard was a WOL. They slunk out, their golf cart puttering like a wounded animal. I let them go. Sales don't swat gnats. Their punishment was coming, a future of guarding vape shops, not terrorizing neighbors. The crowd chanted, "Gnomaget," as Lisa paraded her gnome like a Super Bowl trophy. Tom, our bearded mailbox warrior, took over as interim president. The new board apologized to Sarah and me, Sarah's grace stealing the show. "Just make it right," she said, her bruise gone but her strength louder than ever. They rewrote Rule 4.7, adding clear repair exceptions, a victory I'd hang next to my seal trident. As a peace offering, they erased all fines from the past year. Tom's mailbox, Lisa's gnome, Jenkins' trash cans, poof. The neighborhood exhaled, the HOA's boot finally off our necks. Then came the curveball. As the meeting wrapped, a silver-haired guy in a pressed blazer approached. "Jack Thompson?" he asked, voice like gravel. I nodded, clocking his military stance. "Bill White, Karen's husband, retired Navy colonel. I was under you in '98 Gulf Ops." My brain did a double take. Bill, the ganglion sign I'd reamed for a botched knot, now a colonel, and married to Karen. The universe has a twisted sense of humor. Bill gripped my hand. "Karen's a handful, but this, too far." "Sorry, Jack," I laughed, the absurdity hitting me. "No sweat, Bill. She picked the wrong seal to mess with." He smirked. "She's already eyeing city council. Good luck to them." I groaned. Poor city. We traded a salute, two old salts chuckling over the wreckage of Karen's regime. The fallout was glorious. Channel 7's Follow Up, Oakwood Meadows Rises Up, made Lisa's gnome a star. The state's pro-birth tougher HOA laws, our case a blueprint. We threw a Gnome Liberation Day block party, lawns sprouting ceramic rebels. Tom grilled, Jenkins parked his trash cans defiantly, and Sarah and I danced under fairy lights, her smile my real victory. Lisa's Gnome Liberation Front t-shirts funded a gnome-friendly community garden. Karen vanished, likely penning a memoir. Rules are rules, my HOA glory days. Spoiler, it won't sell. Dave and Greg faded to strip mall obscurity. Tom's board turned meetings into BBQs. Rules now suggestions. I was just Jack 52 sipping coffee with Sarah. The fight won. Got an HOA horror story? Drop it below. What's the wildest rule you've faced? And where are you watching? Phone, TV, computer. Oakwood Meadows showed bullies what happens when they cross a seal's family. Karen's out, the gnomes are free, and we're just getting started.